For this portion, I'd like to introduce Laura Jean Checchi, the President and Director of Disability Programming at Interstellar Inspirations, LLC, and Diana Vierich, the Director of Education at New Jersey Sea Grant Consortium. And like we've been doing, after their 2 presentations, we'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A. So Laura?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, first of all, I'm Italian from Jersey, so prep yourselves. You're not going to be able to sleep because I'm loud. Even without the mic, I can hear somehow. Okay? So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about education and public outreach. And I think this is really important. Most of you are scientists, and I've heard here today a lot, and I'm modifying on the fly, by the way, because I didn't realize the time constraint and that most of you were scientists and not educators. So the idea behind this is that some of you are asking, how do we get these things to roll along faster? How do we get more people involved, right? The last person up here just said that. Well, this is how you do it, through community engagement, education and public outreach, citizen scientist programs. I have been with NASA for 20 years in something called the Solar System Ambassador Program, among other things, but that particular program is a grassroots educational outreach program. So think about it. What the scientists are doing at NASA, black holes, dark matter, baby universes, the whole thing, we are able to then go into schools, pre-K to gray, and take what the scientists are doing and explain this without dumbing it down too much, right? You're not dumbing it down. You're not doing that. You're giving them data-driven information in a way that they can understand so that they get inspired, right? It's about inspiring the next generation of explorers, inspiring the next generation of scientists so that your science will continue forward. Right? Your science. If you're working on something like oysters, for instance, and you never inspire the next generation to pick up that mantle, there's where your research ends, right? So it's about inspiring the next generation of explorers. So I do work with Bergen County Clean Communities, Joanne Jamenden, thank you, right, excellent. And the Department of Health, they did partner officially with the Space Agency, so I am able to give programming that is spherical in nature, spherical, right? Scientists tend to think in a linear fashion, but when you start to think spherically about your research, that's when you're going to grab people. So you want to tell them everything. You want to tell them all your methods and your materials. But if I took a poll right now and I said to you guys, when you do a literature search and you are reading through scientific papers, how many of you go to the materials and methods first? Or how many of you read the abstract, go to the conclusion, and then decide if you want to go back? Raise your hand if you do that. Okay, exactly, okay? So when you're engaging your public, what you want to do is try to get something that you really want to push through, okay? For me right now, thank you, Jacques Cousteau. How many of you know Jacques Cousteau? Okay, at least a few of you, okay. It's the plastics in the ocean, okay? So you take this multifaceted approach and you can hit everywhere with it. You take those concepts that you really want to get across, you go to the senior centers, the schools, the planetariums, everywhere. You could go to companies and you could get this across, right? And I tailor-make the programs for each individual, and remember, there's another part of this too. When you do this and you find the value proposition for the group that you are trying to target, well, let's just say, maybe it's politicians. So maybe there's politicians, and you go to the senior centers, and the seniors really love that the politicians are allowing you to do this education and public outreach. What happens? They vote for them. Value proposition, right? Funding, right? You see places that you want to get funding from, and you're doing this outreach is highlighting their facilities or their organization. Let's fund Clean Communities more, because Clean Communities is getting the warm and fuzzy feeling from the constituents, and we're going to fund that, right? So it's not just as he thinks spherically. Don't think in that linear fashion. So universal instructional design, right? This is inclusive programming, not just a hobby. This was an NSF grant that came from the Meadowlands Environment Center. The National Science Foundation funded this back in, I think, it was 2009. So I'm going to throw this out there for you. Because it's really difficult sometimes when you have a body of research and you're really trying to pinpoint one thing, because everything's important to you. It's your research, right? I mean, everything's important to you. But the way that this model works, and it works for everything, okay, is if you start with a program design, you determine which science content you want in your program, right? And then after that, you make sure that you put the content specific to whatever agency you're working for. So, because, we got to make sure that we pet all the right places, right? You got to make sure you do that. So in this case, it would be the Meadowlands. And then we want to make sure science tools. You don't do tools without science, right? You don't do tools without journaling. So, and documentation would be the journaling. And then I always create 3 programs: a fundamental one, a middle grade one, and one for PhD level. If you are more familiar with the PhD level, you start with a PhD level, and then you start to grind it down a little bit, right? And you do universal instructional design. You just try to imagine how many things you can put in that box, and then if you have to make an accommodation, you do it when you're there, and you modify on the fly like I'm doing right now, right? This is not what I intended to speak about. Sometimes you'll get a group that your program is not going to work for at all, and you just have to throw it out and you just make a special program. Now, you don't have to do this yourselves. At NASA, what they do is they do telecons, right? So the principal investigators, let's say Carolyn Porco is working on Cassini. She will get on. She will take the people who are going to go out into the field. She will educate them on the Cassini mission. That was my first mission at NASA. That's why I'm bringing that up. I know it's not there anymore. Then we go out in the field and we translate that, right, for the people. And you're going into the schools. And people get warm and fuzzy feelings about it. Modify on the fly. Remember that, see this up here? There's a little pie chart. What you know is WIN. What you know you don't know. But what you don't know is the biggest piece of the pie. So even though you know about your science or your particular research, there's people out there, and most people, they don't know what they don't know, right? And so you want to make sure that when you're presenting, you try to incorporate as much as you can, especially with accessibility, because you don't know what you don't know. I am disabled. Every day I get up and I don't know what's going to happen to me that day. I don't know what symptoms I'm going to have. So if I walk into your facility, how could you know how to accommodate me? It's impossible, right? So give yourselves a break if you're dealing with people, by the way, that are disabled, because we don't expect you to know everything, right? You can't know. If I don't know how I'm going to wake up and what I'm going to need, there's no way you're going to be able to know that. So this spherical thinking I'm talking about, I've been giving a lecture called Reduce, Reuse, Recycle from the Earth to the Moon. So however you can hook them in on your research, that's what you want to do. NASA is a big hook. It opens the door, right? So I talk about the oceans of plastic, the Pacific garbage patches, right, the gyres. I start with water being important to life. You always have to try to gauge their understanding. How many world oceans are there? Thank you. I'm going to say, in the last year that I've been giving this lecture, 99.9% of the people think it's 4, 5, or 7. I think I've gotten 2 people that said it was 1. The other thing you could do is bring in things that they already are familiar with. All drains lead to the ocean, kid. Almost all of them have seen something like Finding Nemo, right? You find in your research what it is in pop culture, what it is in the literature that's out there for the masses that relates to what you're doing, and you throw that in there. And then they remember, oh, Nemo is in there, yeah, and all the drains lead to the ocean, and there was that big garbage patch, and our garbage is in there, right? It really does matter. This is how I bring the NASA in, right? Because they took NOAA's information, the buoys, and they found the 5 gyres. And then talk about the moon. What am I talking about with the moon mission? Yes, we are going back to the moon. In 2024, we have our astronauts that will be orbiting in Artemis 2. Artemis 3 will be landing. But that's not the main point. The thread through it is the water. The importance of the water. You see how it's spherical? right? I'm not thinking linearly. I'm not saying we're just going to go to the moon and we're not. No, how does that relate to the topic I really want them to think about? It's like manipulation, right? And when you get them real young, it's great because then you know you're hooking them, right? So, you know, you go to the senior centers, they're going to tell their kids about it, they're going to tell their grandkids about it. The biggest thing, comment that I get at senior centers is, thank you for telling us why. People come in here and they just tell us to do it, and they don't tell us why. And you know, I will massage the lecture until I see what gets them. Mostly what gets them is, you know, there's microplastics like seeping up even in the groundwater. It's in our food and it's in our, you know, it's in your fish. So you don't want your grandchildren to have that. Oh my goodness, no, I don't. They don't care so much about themselves. They figure, it's over. But yeah, they're kids, right? And listen, my main goal is to get people to start thinking about this plastic in the ocean, right? You know, I think a lot of you already do festivals and fairs, but again, always with diversity, diversify. Morgan, can you hold up the poster, please? So come up here. So Morgan did get a degree in marine biology. I asked her to, you know, because whenever I do something, I want to do tactile representation. Remember, universal instructional design. So as many representations of that as you can. So I went out and I bought these fish. I said, can you please do biomagnification and bioaccumulation, biomagnification poster? I said, and I want you to start with plankton. And that's what she did. Do you see that thing? Does everybody see that thing? I did not know what that was. I was like, could you go bring it on this side, please? So I was like, what is this? And she said, oh, SpongeBob SquarePants. I said, you can't put that on my thing. No. But this is exactly the opposite of what I tell people to do, right? Think out of the box. Think spherically. When people see that board with that little green thing on it, they immediately go to that board and they start touching it, and then they start getting the idea, right? So whatever's going to draw them in, and again, you're going to pick something in your particular research or one or two concepts that you really want them to know. But yes, it irritates me when I see it. And I don't understand why his wife is a computer, but whatever. You can see it's right here, right? And so multiple things in the displays all seem different, but actually, subliminally, it's all about the same theme. All right, so I'm just going to run through these quickly because I didn't realize. So one thing that we're going to do is also an essay contest. Okay, so you can solicit a town, a school, and you could say, hey, you know, why don't you come up with an essay contest? Why don't you talk about oysters? For some reason, that's sticking in my head, and how you know, the trash is affecting them or the plastic is affecting them. So the Cousteau Challenge. Jacques Cousteau was the reason I went into science. I've just been made a member of something called the Explorers Club, where his family is a member, has membership to. And so I've decided to commit the rest of my career, actually, to the ocean cleanup. I'm going to cry because in honor of him, right? Because he was the one who inspired me. So I'm going to pass the ticks and mosquitoes. So again, when, you know, now you're talking about essay contests, you're talking about content, maybe you're doing a citizen scientist project. We have Globe Science at NASA. It's very, very robust program, gets people involved. When people feel like they are part of the conversation, when they don't feel like they're being talked to, but they're having a conversation about your research, they get inspired. And it's all about inspiring the next generation of explorers, the next generation of scientists, right? Because again, we will fail if we don't do that in the long term. So social media is another great way to do this. If you have some lacking in public speaking and you really don't want to do a program, you could come up with something like this, right, that represents your research. How much time? I also came up with these programs for the schools. I don't expect you guys to do that. But again, all of these programs have a central theme running through them. So there's several water, there's some that have to do with ticks. All of them, everything I do, even if I'm not at Bergen Community, if I'm with NASA, or if I'm just doing my own public speaking lecture, Clean Communities runs through it. Because I believe that Clean Communities, everything starts with that, right? And it's very spherical, as you guys know science is. So we encourage people to reduce, reuse, recycle. There's nothing wrong with playing with people's patriotism as well, right? So we want to keep America clean. We want to keep our oceans clean. And clean communities are healthy communities. So I encourage you all to just think about this. As scientists, you never think about educating the public about what you're doing. And you actually don't have to do that education. You could educate other people that will educate the public. But please think about doing it, because we're all going to age out, right? The last girl I mentored is sitting at Mission Control right now, drilling for rocks on Mars with Perseverance, right? I mean, it is viscerally obvious that I am old now, and she is the one doing the mission and I am not. But if she wasn't there, who would be doing it, right? I instilled her with those values. I instilled her with that idea of how important that is, because it was selfish of me. I wanted to see that continue. I wanted to see that astrobiology move forward with my vision, right? So I encourage you all to do that. I encourage you all to try to make it as accessible as possible, and I will end the lecture there.
And next up, we have Diana.
It's great to see everybody today. Thanks for having me. I want to talk to you a little bit about a collaborative project that I have with, let me start by saying I'm Diana Burich. I'm from New Jersey Sea Grant Consortium. If you're not familiar with Sea Grant is part of a national network, the National Sea Grant College Program, which falls under the NOAA umbrella. And we're a group of 34 programs that in every coastal and Great Lakes state, as well as Puerto Rico and Guam, that it's a federal university partnership that works towards healthy coastal environments and economies. So this project that is just getting underway is a collaboration between New Jersey Sea Grant, New York Sea Grant, and the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. And actually, my project partners couldn't be here because they're at COP28. How cool is that? But this is a community action project that will engage high school and middle school students, equipping them with knowledge for scientific knowledge and skills to help them develop solutions for mitigating plastic use and sustainable solutions for management of plastic waste in their communities. The project aims to address reducing the use of non-biodegradable products, especially plastics and microplastics. And what we really want to do is to help them minimize the environmental harm to their communities. So many people are talking, the presentations, by the way, today they were so good, really interesting, but we've been learning about microplastics in the environment, microplastics in our food sources, marine life, as well as plastic-associated toxicants in the environment as well. So I always like to talk about funding because everybody wants to know how we paid for the project. So if you're not familiar with Sea Grant, you must know that there is a funding opportunity now that's going on. So as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, NOAA received $3 billion to focus on marine debris, coastal resilience, and a few other concerns throughout the nation. And Sea Grant received about $50 million for the next 5 years. So there are 4 more funding opportunities coming up. There is one now that the letter of intent is due in December next week, for community action projects. But there are also funding opportunities for it's called a challenge competition. It's like a research to practice. I strongly recommend, I know I shared this with Ishan before, but I strongly recommend if you have an idea for something really cool, those competition grants are up to $3 million for 2 years. So in any case, we applied for this project back in last September. We were awarded in March. Announcement was kind of put off for a little while, so we started in July. And As we're talking about marine debris, I just kind of wanted to reiterate NOAA's definition, which is any persistent solid material that's manufactured or processed and directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally disposed or abandoned in the marine environment or the Great Lakes. Okay. Hey, that didn't come out right. Okay. So this project is really building on Columbia University's Eco Ambassadors program. And in 2019, they did a pilot program where they engaged kids, high school and middle school age kids. They were tasked with observing their surroundings. And the kids identified environmental issues that they felt strongly connected to. They researched it. They planned problem-solving actions, and they were able to share that at the 2019 Conference on Sustainable Development. It's in partnership with the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, which is a UN global initiative. So to date, about 100 kids participated in Eco Ambassadors. They did 200 virtual workshops with about 10,000 viewerships. Their YouTube channel has close to 300 subscribers. It's Education for Sustainability, Sustainable Development, and they have about 500 contacts on their listserv. So some of the kids that participated in Eco Ambassadors kind of went on to do great things. I do want to backtrack. When we say community science, it's like they're volunteering to do this. They're not required to do this through their school. Columbia kind of puts it out there. We have this project, Help Us with Research, and I'll get to that in a second. So some of the kids that participated in the Eco Ambassadors program, they are in STEM fields at colleges. They are researching microplastics and biogases. Some of the kids even started environmental clubs in their schools. One girl started a podcast, and they've written to their lawmakers. So the kids that are involved in this project are really like taking action. In 2022, there was a summer workshop. So they had summer workshop Fridays. They had 80 students participate. You know, it's all volunteer. They were trained in climate storytelling. They used GIS mapping. They created story maps. That was the end product. They learned data collection and analysis skills. So this funding opportunity wants to expand on that project. But what we're looking to do is expand to communities that suffer from environmental injustice. So, you know, what is it? I know we were talking about it. It was mentioned a little bit today. You know, it's a social movement. You know, fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with regard to development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws and regulations and policies. Basically, that everybody has the same experiences. I want to backtrack. That people in all communities have the same degree of protection from environmental hazards, and that everybody have equal access to the decision-making process. So, okay. Yeah, okay. Sorry. So why community engagement? Like, why should the community be involved in marine debris solutions? And you've heard the theme with people talking all throughout the day, tailoring projects to meet the needs, the specific needs of communities and their concerns. Because when it reaches closer to home, it gets you more interested, it gets you more involved. When it's closer to home, communities can address important issues, and it makes the initiatives more relevant to the community. Local context is going to increase the chances of the project's success and sustainability, and it really benefits both the environment and the community. So why kids? So we specialize in New Jersey. I don't want to say we specialize it, but we do a whole lot of environmental education for K through 12. Our program educates about 20,000 kids a year. Our headquarters are on Sandy Hook. We reach kids all over the state for outdoor experiential learning and in-school programs. And I almost want to sing that Whitney Houston song, I believe the children are the future. But it's a STEM-focused learning activity, so the kids learn how to do research. They learn how to tackle problems. They get motivated to tackling their problems. They learn how to think critically. They learn more science content. And it increases their trust in the scientific process as well. And we know marine debris is not just a global issue, it's a local issue. So it's really like the mitigation is going to be kind of based on people's activities and attitudes, how they feel about marine debris in their communities. Attitudes, activities of individuals and communities and industries really drive the global problem. And you need good players in communities to make a difference. So the community science, in this case, is going to explore water quality issues in local waterways. So let me see. We're going to be using the EPA. I'll get to that in a second. We're going to be using the EPA tool EJ Screen. If nobody's ever played in that before, I mean, you might have needed it for work, but I have to admit, it's kind of fun to tool around in that, to look at all the layers on the maps and really get the information that you need. So we have been using the EJ Screen tool to identify communities to work with that have existing water quality issues. We're going to use the tool to engage the kids as well. So it'll build knowledge and awareness of the issues that they're facing, and the activities that they're going to participate in are things like water quality sampling. They're going to visit wastewater treatment plants and impacted waterfronts. They're actually going to be using geospatial data tools from Esri, like Survey 123, ArcGIS Online, and Story Maps. That'll help them build problem solving and decision-making skills. And the tools are going to be used by the kids to document their learning and share their stories about their impacted communities. And the outputs will help to guide their peers and their communities. So with regard to, this is kind of from our grant. So, we're looking to work with 50 middle school and high school students in the New York, New Jersey area. The geographical area is the Hudson and the Hackensack River watersheds and Long Island Sound around New York. It's a densely populated area. The Hackensack River was just designated a Superfund site in the spring. A Superfund site in the spring. And it is now a Superfund fight in the spring. So the interdisciplinary learning that the kids will be engaged in, the topics that are covered in a project like this where they're doing research and they're creating story maps and communicating to their communities. They're learning science through research, geospatial mapping, they're learning geography, storytelling, learning about language, writing, literature, advocacy through persuasive writing and communications, social studies and languages. So you give a kid a project that covers all those topics in school, and it kind of makes it a little bit more fun and more meaningful because it's taking place, the work is taking place in their community, and they're able to really express and talk about what's going on. But there's also curriculum involved in this too, because we have education professionals. So there has been curriculum developed. There will be curriculum developed. Nobody wants to reinvent the wheel. We just want to make it a little bit better. So the kids will be engaged with workshops, online, in person, and one of the important things about the projects too, a Sea Grant, and Sea Grant has priorities, so we are tasked with increasing environmental literacy and keeping our coasts and waterways clean. Those are just the smattering of the components that that we will be working on. Like I said, New York, New Jersey, both Sea Grants, community learning is involved, the project supports environmental justice, focusing on clean and safe water in the environment, promoting environmental literacy, creating education resources. So it's kind of an ambitious project. Right now, we're in the process of recruiting kids to participate, so we have a target goal of 50 students. We're up to 28 that have signed on. And we're focusing on communities that are environmentally marginalized and that have proximity to wastewater discharges. So I'm going to flip to the next, no, not that one. Oh, no, this is the old one, right? Okay, so I had a map before, I apologize. But in this area, there are hundreds of schools. And there are an awful lot of wastewater discharge sites really close to the schools. So the aim is to work with kids that are close to waterways that can collect water samples, either analyze them themselves, but they're going to be trained with a collection protocol from the Columbia researchers that are working on microplastic research. They will send their samples into the lab, but they'll also have the opportunity to go to the research lab, which is, it's actually up in Palisades, New York, Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. So I absolutely want to address one of the issues that came up as we were planning. So the pilot project took place in New York, and it's really easy for city kids to get around New York. Public transportation is great. With this new project, we're reaching out to groups in New Jersey, and public transportation is not good. We're looking to get kids that are in urban areas that are, disproportionately marginalized, and how are we going to get them to the lab? So we kind of pivoted a little bit, and that's where grad students come in. So grad students will be helping us do outreach in New Jersey, going to the schools, helping to train kids. The other aspect that kind of threw things off a little bit for us is the announcement of these projects were pushed back by almost 8 weeks, so it pushed back our start time. This is supposed to be a summer project where the kids kind of like volunteer and work throughout the summer like they have in the past. But this time around, we're looking to engage them in the spring. So I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed to see how it goes, because if there is a lack of engagement, let's say from one side of the Hudson River, like the New Jersey side, then we have to really address the barriers that I anticipate that we would face, which would be like bringing the science to the students or bringing the students to the science. So talk to me in a couple of months and I'll let you know how it goes. This is our evolving timeline, and I'm going to kind of wrap it up there. I'm at the top. Radhika and Hayan are the other project partners. Feel free to take the information if you have any questions.
I would like you to speak more on storytelling and how we can use it both with science and how we can connect those two things. I think you were speaking wonderfully on it. Please do more.
Storytelling is actually, now that I can be calm, okay, it's actually something that is really important and absolutely brings in that spherical component. So let's just say we're going to go out and talk, it's a water conference, so I'll talk about the water. When I start the Reduce, Reuse, Recycle from the Earth to the Moon, I start with the Vikings and how exploration was important. Water is important, right, because this is what we did back in the day. If I'm doing astronomy, let's say I'm in a star lab or something like that, I'm talking about storytelling. I'm talking about Orion and the mythology behind that. So to me, science, because it did start, right, as a philosophy, the philosophy of science, right? Socrates, Plato, they were all storytellers, right? So to me, telling the story is a way to really get them to, especially the young ones, it really gets them to start investing, because it's not just facts being thrown at them. But again, any story, and this is mostly, obviously NASA, it has to be data driven. And that's where all of you come in, because if you have some research that you're doing, it just takes so I'm doing a lecture about eclipses, and I'm going to talk about the Babylonians first, right, and how they did that, and then bring it up, and then bring up safe solar viewing, and then bring up the eclipse, right? So when you can thread it like that, that's when people remember it. So yes, storytelling is extremely important. So I encourage people to do that. I know in the city, by the way, I went to Columbia and I'm from New Jersey, so yay for Columbia. That's my alma mater. I almost broke out into song. Yeah, so storytelling is very important, and what I've done is actually gone to different poetry sessions and things like that and learned how to storytell a little bit better, so that when I get in these areas, I know how to read the audience, and if I'm losing them, shift and storytell. So thank you for bringing that up. Storytelling, very important to communicate.
My question is directed to Laura. Laura, you inspired me. The way you came into the room, the power of the tone of your voice, it greatly inspired me. As someone who is learning in an environment to communicate to the understanding of others. I grew up in Cameroon. I studied in Sweden. I speak Swedish. And I'm in the US. And my question to you, working in the community where you interact, we're all talking about diversity. And I know very well that you come across kids who are not able to communicate well in the environment. They have that complex. How do you inspire them? Thank you.
It's a very, very good question. Okay, so, and I'm going to storytell it. Okay, ready? So one of the first lectures that I gave was in inner city Newark, New Jersey. I don't know if you're familiar with Newark, New Jersey. It was a church. And when I walked in there, I was the only person that looked like me, okay? And in a multitude of ways, right? Because obviously you could all see I'm overweight and everything else, right? And I was sitting with a NASA table, it was like a career day for these kids. And not one child came to my station, right? And I thought to myself, okay, I'm just put it out there. I'm white, I'm overweight. I went to Columbia. They probably think I'm privileged, right? So how can I get them to engage? It's my job to engage them, to bring them to the issue. It's not their job to understand the issue prior to our contact with them, right? It's our responsibility as elders, well, in my case, an elder, but unfortunately, but to engage them and inspire them. So when I was at Columbia University, I studied polar bears. And I happened to have 2 little stuffed polar bears. So I put these 2 little polar bears that I thought maybe these stuffed polar bears, and one little girl came over. And she said to me, I like your polar bears. And I said, well, why didn't you, this is NASA. Why didn't? She said, I could never work for NASA. And I said, why do you think that? She said, well, I come from a broken home, economically, she didn't say economically disadvantaged, but that's what she meant. And so I opened up to her because I wanted to catch these kids, and nobody was coming to my table. I happened to be a runaway. I ran away when I was 14 and never went back home. So they had a view of me like I was something they couldn't attain. And there's this new little, I don't know if you would call it a cliche or a quote, if you can't see it, you can't be it. I disagree with that, by the way. I disagree with that. Because I couldn't see it, and I still became what I think is a successful person in what I find passionate. But it does help, right? When somebody can put themselves out there realistically, not in an ivory tower, and say, you can do this. Your circumstances today are not going to dictate what you become as an adult. And if you stay in school and you strive to be true in your heart. Somebody asked me the other day, how did you get here? Be true to the science, I said to them. Be true to your science, and your science will open the doors to your success, right? I believe this in my heart. And so when you get in an underserved community, which is mostly what I address, because NASA is very big on reaching underserved communities, this is how you have to inspire them. It doesn't matter, black, white, rich, poor, whatever your circumstance is, the science can transcend that. When you get the knowledge and the understanding, you gain the access to the universe. I tell them, you are the universe made manifest in human form. We are all the same. We all come from the same ingredients that made the universe initially. Not just one star, love Carl Sagan, not just one star. All the exploding stars in the early formation of the universe. They are no different than me. They don't have to wish upon a star, they are the star, right? That's what I tell them. I tell them, believe in yourself, stay in school, and I tell them, stay off drugs. And I tell the girls, stay away from boys, they will break your brain, and stay in school. I do, I'm being honest, I tell them that. And so yeah, just making that connection. NASA reprimanded me for telling them my story about being homeless for so long, because people at NASA don't talk about themselves. And they said, don't do it again. And then I was on board the Intrepid in a panel discussion, and there was a bunch of girls, and some of them were underprivileged, and I did it again, because I said, what is more important? My position, my goals, or inspiring them? And I made the choice to inspire them. And now NASA was like, oh, well, okay, because they see the value in it, right? So my advice to that is, even if you don't speak the language, science, purity of heart, data-driven things, that's the language that everybody can understand. So speak that to the people that aren't understanding your research.
This question is for Diana. I feel a lot of our people here in the room are probably in the same boat, where when we come up with resources for schools and for teachers and we try to reach out to them, teachers, especially since the pandemic, are overburdened and overworked. How do you go about starting those conversations with those schools to really understand the importance of what these programs do?
Thanks. That's a very good question, because let's just say, like, in this aspect with this project. So we have a pretty robust education program. I have like 2,000 teachers in my database, and that it is a lot. Sure. We've been doing education programs for almost 40 years on Sandy Hook, and we have teachers that come to us year after year. I'm starting to see some of their students who have now become teachers coming to our programs, which is really great. So we must be doing something right, and we appreciate that. But how about like something totally different? Like we just did teacher workshops the past 2 years for teaching climate change for K through 12 teachers, K through 6th grade teachers, because most elementary school teachers are not science majors, and they don't have a lot of confidence in teaching science. So we go to workshops. We talk to them about the opportunities that we have. I literally might just kind of look at the school's website and almost target who I want to talk to. I'll send out an email. I might follow up with a phone call. We engage partners. There might be one of my partners over there, Jennifer, is with the Jenkinson's Aquarium. We've collaborated on programs before, so she might be able to share information that I have. I might be able to share information that she has, vice versa. So we might be able to help each other out. And really, it can't necessarily be what we would like to do. It kind of has to be what the teachers need. So I find needs assessments really useful with the people that we know. What kind of things are you looking for? Are you looking for high school programs? What types of things are you looking for your high school students? Are you looking for, water chemistry? Are you looking for, something that's focused on ocean processes, and try to deliver and make opportunities available to them? I don't know if that really answers your question, but I feel like things like this, like workshops like this, where you see people and you meet people, exhibit at a table, smile. No, I'm serious. Smile. I might not be doing it right now, but when I'm at workshops, it's like I'm so excited to be there, and I just like want to share with people what we do. So it's like, oh, everybody's my buddy, and you have so many friends out there that are doing the same thing that you're doing. So sometimes just to smile and say, hey, do you want to learn about our programs? We can help you, or how can we help you? It's just networking, maybe.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
The other thing that we do, that if you go outside at our booth, we have brochures for teachers. And everything that we create is aligned to the standards in that state. And the teachers love that because they don't have to look up the standards. So that's also very helpful. In addition to giving them, say, hey, here's a brochure. These are the things we can offer you. And then also say, but we will also tailor-make anything that you want. The tailor-made aspect of that is very important. But also, in my experience, in our experience, the aligning with the in our case, the New Jersey core curriculum content standards and next generation science standards was a real draw for them. Because, like you said, they're very busy.
You have to, because they can't justify utilizing your material. Everything does have to be content standard aligned, because otherwise they really can't justify using your material or coming to one of your programs or having you come to schools, to their schools. So.
Welcome back for our final session here, the second portion of our community engagement portion of the agenda. And it's my pleasure again to introduce Joanna Guardado and Nancy Morales from Defensores de la Cuenca. Joanna and Nancy will be presenting on their La Academia de Defensores program, which we'll follow up with about 15, 20-minute Q&A. So go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everyone. As you can see, I'm Nancy Morales.
And I'm Joanna Guardado. And today we'll be talking about Defensores de la Cuenca, which translates to Watershed Defenders. And we are a nonprofit Latinx-led organization, and we strive to connect the Latinx community to the watershed, nature, and each other. And this we do through workshops and outdoor events and activities. We're always working to share our knowledge and information with the community, and the importance of the role of the environment and what it does to not only our mental health, but also our physical health. And we believe that with all this knowledge, all this access to tools, that we can empower the Latinx community to become leaders in their own rights. So, I am the programs coordinator for Defensores. This means that I'm in charge of our Patapsco cohort of La Academia, and in the future I will be taking lead of our Embajadores de Árboles. And just to backtrack a little bit, La Academia stands for the Academy, and then Embajadores de Árboles is tree ambassadors.
And then I work as programs assistant. I'm in charge of our Anacostia Alpha and Beta cohorts of La Academia.
And so basically the work that we do, we have three major big programs that we are very proud of. The first one is La Academia, and it's a paid training in Spanish for the Latinx community to gain experience through workshops and in-person events regarding the watershed and the issues surrounding it.
Then we have Embajadores de Árboles, which again is tree ambassadors. It's another paid training program we have for Latinx community members to learn about trees and find hosts where trees can be planted. So these participants are engaging with their community. They're going to homeowners. They're asking me, hey, do you want free trees? We also do tabling events there. We also advertise these trees because these participants do have a quota of trees to meet at the end.
Yep. And then we have our Defensores youth group, and this is a group that promotes environmental stewardship and provides job training for the participant. And this again is also paid, and they do some activities like tree planting, tree maintenance, and sometimes they do fun activities like visiting nurseries where trees and plants are being grown, and also kayaking. And then we have other fun activities. One of them is Afuera Fest, and this is a camping trip that we offer to the community so that they can explore the outdoors, and we provide necessities like a tent or a sleeping bag or something that they might not have that would be useful on the trip.
Then we have Salsa en el Parque, which is salsa in the park. It's an event where we invite salsa instructors to teach community members how to dance salsa. It's a great way to get the community engaged and outside, thinking about the space around them. And it's also a great way to promote our other programs that we've mentioned.
And then one of our biggest events that we do have is Cumbre de Liderazgo, which stands for Leadership Summit. And we basically bring together leaders, community members, and organizations that work with the Latinx community to talk about their experience. And it's a great networking event, especially if you're interested in how you can expand into that community and how you can do work with that. Okay, so a little bit more about La Academia. Like we mentioned, there are 3 cohorts. We have Anacostia Alpha and Beta, which Nancy is in charge of, and then you have the Patapsco cohort, which is in Baltimore City, and I take care of that. And basically, it's 6 virtual workshops and 6 in-person workshops, and we partner with local organizations such as Patterson Audubon and Anacostia Watershed Society. And also the topics of the presentations range from the importance of trees and animals and how they protect the watershed, and also recycling and microplastics. And then we do hands-on activities for the in-person workshops, such as gardening, bird watching. We take them out on boat rides. And also, it's funny because we had a microplastics presentation, and we were going to take them to go see the trash wheel at Masonville Cove. And they were super excited about it, but unfortunately there was a big storm the day that we were supposed to be going. So we ended up canceling, but some of them ended up going a different day, and they got to experience that, so it was pretty well. And then at the end of the program, they have a capstone project to complete. They develop it, they develop it, and then they implement it, and we give them a budget of $3,000, and they can do something to give back to their community. And further on, we'll talk about what projects those are.
Right, so to dive into those projects, we've chosen 2 projects from each class. So I'll be going first with the Anacostia projects. We'll start off with Clase Alpha, so the Alpha class. First, we have Good Neighbor Day with Cesar Chavez Dual Spanish Immersion, which was a project led by Candida, Lillian, and Jairo in collaboration with Cesar Chavez Dual Spanish Immersion. They worked together to engage with the community to install a school garden that will be maintained by students in the future. They also did a cleanup, picked up some litter around. It was a really nice day. Then we have our fall cleanup, which was led by Edith in conjunction with Rosa L. Parks Elementary School. Families were also invited to come together to pick up litter around the school. They planted native trees, and that elementary school actually already had a school garden. So we also just did some maintenance on that garden as well. Then with Clase Beta, we have Limpieza de Nuestro Río, which means cleanup of our river. This project was led by Maria, who organized 2 river cleanups in the Silver Spring area. Then lastly, we have Marta and Veronica, who held a tree planting event at their church, where families were invited to learn about the impact of trees and how to plant them.
And now moving on to the Patapsco projects. I don't have many pictures as Nancy because most of our projects are going to be held in the spring, so they haven't happened yet. But one of the projects that we did complete was a cleanup and planting of native plants in middle school in Baltimore City. This was a school that one of our participants, her kids attend that school, and she was like, this is an area that needs help, and so we were able to provide those funds, and we helped her develop it. And then some of our future projects will be tree plantings. Our participants have chosen community parks in their areas, and we'll be holding those in the spring. And then two other ones are, one of our participants will be doing a workshop to teach the community about composting, and they will be providing the materials. So every participant that comes to the workshop will be able to continue the composting in their own homes. And then we'll be doing native gardens throughout the spring at both public libraries and schools in the neighborhoods of our participants. So, with that and with all the information we've just given you, these are some of our goals that we have hopes for in the future of completing, because we have seen the work and how it has impacted the communities, right? So we first want to continue the programs. We have seen the impact not only on the participants, but also on the communities and where they have held their projects. So we hope to continue the programs for as long as we can and as long as we're funded. We also hope to expand to other regions. Currently, we're only doing Patapsco and the Anacostia area, but we hope to go into other regions where we know there are huge communities of Spanish-speaking and Latino people. And then we want to keep continuing those connections with the participants and the communities and connecting them back to nature. Because, again, if you get them to care about it, they'll be more likely to do it, right? So we hope to keep fostering those connections with them. And then we also hope to continue creating partnerships with the local organizations because they know more about the community needs than we do, right? We are around Maryland, but we're not really centralized in one area. So we might come into a community and be like, here's some money for something, but then they're like, well, we don't really need money for that thing. We actually need it for another thing. So creating those partnerships with the local organization is going to help us direct the funds where they need to go.
And of course, a very key and important part of this is empowering the Latinx community. Obviously, we want to make them believe that they're able to make a chance or a change in this community and that they can maintain it for the future. This might be like the first time that they're getting a hand held out to them, right? So we have to be careful with that and keep their needs in mind. And in order to support that empowerment, we hope to establish our own tree nursery so that materials are more accessible and so that we can have a bigger budget to work with and hopefully fund even more projects.
Did you skip our links?
I didn't.
Well, I guess it's not here, but we had a link slide, and we had, I don't know where it went, but we had our website and everything. But these are emails with the organization, so if you have a question that you might not say today, but you want to say it later on, or if you have any projects or something that you think we could partner on, please feel free to reach us out. Thank you.
So quick question for you. I see you're doing a lot of landward type of development within the communities. I'm from the state of Delaware. Many of our local Latin communities are active in the fisheries as well as subsistence fishing or crabbing, depending on the type of community it is. What type of recommendation do you have to extend to those communities for better outreach? So one of my major issues is abandoned fishing gear. How would you suggest we better impart that information to those communities?
My first thought is do you guys have materials in Spanish translated? I know that can be a little bit hard, right? Because there is, how am I trying to put this into word? But there is a limit on how many people we employ that can speak Spanish fluently, and sometimes legalities on what can be translated, right, especially for the government. My first thought is Spanish materials, but then my second thought is finding those community liaisons, right? This is more outreach, more engagement, but one thing that we do is that we go to either churches or places we know that the Latinx community meets and that they have a spokesperson, and we kind of engage with them and communicate with them, because it's easier for them to relay back that information than for us, well, for you guys to go in and be like, hey, this is it. I'm saying me, but I think they would take it better from me. But yeah, so like having those ins into the communities is very beneficial. I know it's very hard to do so, but I know in Baltimore we have a lot of organizations such as Latino Comité, or we have CASA and stuff like that, where we reach out to them and we're like, listen, we know you guys have a great amount of members that come to your meetings. We would like to be there. We would like to like provide materials for you guys to have. So those could be some ideas that you could look into aside from translating materials. I don't know if you have anything else to say.
No, that covers everything. That was a good answer.
I know, I have one question. Well, it's probably two questions, but first one, and I apologize if you mentioned this, I was standing right here, but funding. How do you fund the work that you do? Because it seems pretty extensive. I mean, having a paid program is definitely the ideal, but how do you have funding for that and have a sustainable model for that funding?
So that's another very good question, and I don't know if I'll be able to answer that because I'm not really, I think that would be an Abel question. Abel is our founder and he's our supervisor and everything, but we get granting and funding, so we apply for a lot of grants, right? The one for the tree nursery is a grant we just applied for, and we were awarded a certain amount, so now we have to scale a little bit back, but that's still some money that we were awarded, right? And then with La Academia, we get our funds to, I think the first one was a mixture of DNR, the Department of Natural Resources for Maryland, and then the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, I think. And now La Academia Patapsco is being fully funded by NIFWIF. So we apply for those grants, and we're, again, that's an Abel question because he's the one who's applying for them. But we're always looking to apply for things because we know it's money that's needed. And I think a thing that we hope to do with the tree nursery is garnishing those funds, right? Like hoping to have more funds so that we can not solely rely on grants, but for right now we are just relying on grants and doing those applications.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and our budgets are always changing. So I think that's something that the wonderful two speakers before us mentioned is flexibility. Things are always changing. The ideas our participants have are always changing as well. So that means purchases may vary. We might have to restructure our budget multiple times, but it's hard work. Definitely, but it's definitely worth it in the end. So, one big thing, not just with our budgets, but as a whole in our organization, is just flexibility.
And I think that kind of answered the second part of my question, but if you feel like going into it, what advice, and it might have just been flexibility, but what advice do you have for other organizations in here who might want to set up a similar program, a paid training program, something that empowers a community to get involved and connected?
I think it's also considering, because the reason why we do our paid trainings and emphasis on paid is because we recognize that the Latinx community has needs that might differ from other communities, right? They have types of jobs where they really can't call out if they need to go to a conference or if they have a workshop they want to go, because that's money lost, right? And their conditions, they need money to keep flowing. So that's why we're always trying to see if we can compensate them for their time. So, sorry, trying to rethink why I was going back to that. But just if you're trying to do these trainings and stuff like that, just always keep in consideration what the participants need, because it might be different than what you or I could need. Fortunately, we're in positions where we're very flexible and we can take time off, or like, this is my work day for today, right? Attending this conference. Unfortunately, some people can't do that, and I think having that forefront and showing that to them is very important, and it shows that we're thinking of their needs first and foremost.
And like Joanna touched on earlier, community liaisons. So with our La Academia program, we have actually contracted people who go through these programs who are especially motivated and excited to be in this work. I myself actually was in the Alpha class, and Abel reached out to me. Like, if it wasn't for this program, I literally would not be here right now. Right, so it's really important to give these spaces and give these participants the opportunity to be there for their community, and it's also an opportunity for them to start a career in this, and now they're able to make more space for this work. So being able to see like who's really passionate about this work when you do start these programs, and being like, hey, do you want to maybe mentor people in our future programs? Do you want to be our community liaison and connect us with the groups that we might not have thought about in the first place, right? Because it's easy for us to sit up here and be like, yeah, we're gonna set up this program, we're gonna advertise and everything, but like, to everyone in the community, we're just talking a bunch of mumbo jumbo, right? It's all like, we gotta do this and that and whatever, but when it's the community liaison, that's family. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters a lot to most of us. And speaking on that, shout out to my dad. Thank you for coming out to support me, because this is what we're doing the work for, is for families, our families, for future generations, right? So that's one thing we really want to hit home, is that we want to include you in our family, and that means protecting the environment.
That was such a good note to end on that I kind of hate to ask another question. But I was especially intrigued by the idea that the community members come to you for a proposal on what to do. And I was curious as to what that process looked like. Are you inundated with lots of proposals? Is it a written thing? Is it a presentation? Or how do you go about selecting those?
So yeah, we actually have a template that at the end of the program or near the end of the program, we give them this document, and it's basically like asking them these questions to break down their ideas. Like, all right, where do you want to do this? Why do you want to do it there? What do you plan on doing? What tools might you need to carry this project out? And what other resources might you need from us? And so then from that proposal, we look it over, we see what's realistic in our budget and what we can really support them in doing. And from there, we work on the budget, we go through budget approvals, and we continue to have conversations about this project, and as time goes on, it becomes more concrete.
And I just want to add that all of our projects have to relate back to protecting and improving the watershed.